Hey, this is Anita. I wanted to talk to you today about something that I think this will be helpful to a lot of you, because if you're like me, you've gone for years and not even realized that you have a certain condition that that you may not be aware of, and just knowing that you have this can at least bring you some kind of peace of mind and maybe help you find ways around it. Now, I have gone probably all of my life. I am going to be 70 years old this year, and I've gone almost all my life without knowing that I suffer from attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And back when I was a kid, it wasn't a thing. Nobody even really knew about it. And I think if my parents had been aware of it, they might have done some things differently. But, that's neither here nor there. And I wanted to go through, there's kind of a little checklist here that I found online, and just kind of go through your own mind and think of things in your own life that may be connected with this. But an ADD person, I have difficulty in getting organized. Now, that is absolutely me. I am terrible at organizing. I try to organize things and just can't seem to pull things together. And when given a task, I usually procrastinate rather than doing it right away. And that is true, although I am getting better at that. I'm trying to do things right away, although the bad side of that is that I tend to try to do things before I'm ready to do them, but that's another thing. I work on a lot of projects but can't seem to complete most of them. Now, a person with ADD not only will work on a lot of projects, but they have a lot of projects because they're interesting people. They're people that are interested in a lot of things. They have a lot of interests and a lot of hobbies, and they're kind of like a jack of all trades and master of none. And I tend to make decisions and act on them impulsively, like spending money, being sexually involved with someone, diving into new activities, changing plans. And I am very impulsive about just about everything I've done in my life. And I get bored easily. Now, that doesn't mean that you sit around being bored, because an ADD person never just sits around. Usually what happens if you're bored easily is you're in a meeting, you're in a classroom, you're in church, you're in some situations, and you feel like, I just got to get out of here. This is driving me nuts. This is not interesting to me. I want to go do something else. And so that's more what that means. And no matter how much I do or how hard I try, I just can't seem to reach my goals. You can make goals, but your brain just is all over the place that you can't. It's really hard to focus on a goal, and you tend to try to go after shiny objects all the time. I often get distracted when people are talking. I just tune out and drift off. And what happens here is, usually for me, somebody will be talking and they'll say something that triggers an idea in my head, and I go off, my brain goes off and explores this idea that comes in my head, and then I'll have to come back and say, what'd you say? But yeah, my brain just is all over the place. It's over here, it's over there, it's over there. And it's like little splashes of ideas all over the place. People with ADD can be very creative and inventive people, and by no means are they stupid people. In fact, I did an IQ test, and I actually have a pretty high IQ compared with a lot of other people, and most ADD people tend to have higher IQs. I get so wrapped up in some things that I do that I can hardly stop to take a break or switch doing to something else. Now, what happens here is you become hyper-focused on an activity. It's usually something that really interests you, and you can get so focused on something that it's like you have this little tunnel vision, and all you can focus on is what you're doing. my kids used to really enjoy this because when computers first came out, I was just fascinated by computers. And so I'd be working on a computer, and my kids would come up and they'd ask me for money, because they knew that if I was focused on working on the computer, that I wasn't really paying attention to what they were saying. I said, well, yeah, go ahead, just get what you need and go. And so I'd try to get rid of them. And so they knew it was always a good idea to ask me for money or ask if they could do something when I was focused on something else. And so it was to their benefit to have me be this way. And I tend to overdo things even when they're not good for me, like compulsive shopping, drinking too much, overworking, or overeating. And you do that. You tend to, when you're really interested in something, you just go way into it, like I was with computers when they first came out. Well, still, I love computers, and with my musical instruments. And when I was learning guitar, I bought my first guitar when I was 15 because I really wanted to learn how to play, and I was so driven. The guitar was a terrible, nasty little guitar, and the neck was warped, and so the strings were really high off the neck, and it had steel strings. And I would play until my fingers literally bled. And I would just keep playing until they got numb. Of course, the next day when I started to play again, it was really painful. But I was so driven to learn that I thought that the pain, I just worked through the pain. And so that can be either a good thing or a bad thing. And I get frustrated easily and impatient when things are going too slowly, and that is really true. I tend to want things to go faster. And my self-esteem is not as high as that of others that I know. That is definitely true. I need a lot of stimulation from things like action movies, video games, new purchases, being among lively friends, driving fast, or engaging in extreme sports. And during the COVID-19 thing, it's really hard on people with ADD because they tend to really need to be around people and like to have a lot of action, things going in their lives, going to sporting events, things like that. And so being locked up with COVID-19 is really, really difficult for an ADD person. And I tend to say or do things without thinking, and sometimes that gets me into trouble, and boy, that is the story of my life. And I'd rather do things my own way than follow the rules and procedures of others, and that is my life. I often find myself tapping a pencil, swinging my leg, or doing something else to work off nervous energy. Oh yes, I do. I tap my fingers and I twiddle my toes and I actually click my teeth and there's a lot of things that I do. I can feel suddenly down when I'm separated from people, projects, or things that I like to be involved with, and that is absolutely true. I see myself differently than others see me, and when someone gets angry with me for doing something that upset them, I'm often very surprised. That happens to me occasionally. And even though I worry about dangerous things that are unlikely to happen to me, I tend to be careless and accident prone, and that's true, not to a great extent, but that has been true. And even though I have a lot of fears, people would describe me as a risk taker. That's true. I make a lot of careless mistakes. Oh, I am the master of mistake making. And I have blood relatives who suffer from ADD and another neurological disorder or substance abuse, and I don't really know if I have any blood relatives that suffer from ADD. I do know relatives that have suffered depression and other things like that, but I really don't know about blood relatives. But I would assume that because I have this, that I probably do. And I've noticed some of these things in my children and my grandchildren. And so, I hope that their parents become aware of this. We got that Heidi and Rachel and Shoshana and Sarah and Josh. These are things that you need to be aware of. And so I answered yes to all of these questions, everything but the last one. And so it says, if you answered yes to 15 of these questions, you show signs of attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, or ADD. However, you can still have ADHD even if you answered yes to fewer than 15 of these questions. This informal test is intended as a general guide only. Share it with your doctor for further analysis. If you think your child might have ADD, take the ADD test for kids. One thing, when I was a kid, I was having trouble in school, a lot of trouble focusing in school, and I just wasn't doing well at all. And so my mom took me to the school counselor. This was in 3rd grade, I think it was. And so I would go into the counselor a couple times a week during the school week, and we'd just sit around and talk. And I think he was a very astute guy. One thing he did that actually was really, really helpful was he taught me to play chess. Now, I was never exceedingly good at chess because I can't focus enough to get really good at it. But it did teach me to focus and look ahead for my actions now and the consequences of those actions. And chess was a really good thing to teach me that particular skill. And I think that learning how to play chess was kind of a turning point. It clicked some kind of a key in my brain. And after 3rd grade, I started doing better in school. Just thought, this might be interesting for some of you, that, don't beat yourself up. If you have ADD, you tend to be harder on yourself than a lot of people are. And you really get mad at yourself when you're figuring an appointment. I have forgotten my kids at school. I left my child alone in the car, completely forgot them. I've made a lot of mistakes like that, and forgotten important appointments. But even if I write them down, I tend to not look at my list. So I really get upset with myself when I do something stupid like that. But don't beat yourself up. Just, I've learned to live with this in my life. I've read it. I've led a reasonably successful life and a pretty happy life, I think, and raised some good kids. But it's important to know that, even though you might suffer from this, you can deal with all of these things. You can deal with every situation that happens with you. It's just the way God made me. I don't know that I would call it a disorder. It's just the way I am. And in fact, I don't like calling it a disorder because that makes it seem like there's something wrong with you. And it's just the way you are. It's not wrong or right. It's just you have these particular quirks that happen to be part of your personal makeup of who you are. And so don't call it a disorder. Just understand that God made you the way you are for a reason, and you can easily deal with the way that God made you. I hope this has been kind of helpful for you, and maybe it helps me understand a little bit about who I am, and not be so upset that I am this way. If you understand who you are, it's easier to forgive yourself of things and understand why you do things. But there might be medicines you could take if you have deeper problems, but I've never had to take any medications for it. But anyway, I just thought that would be helpful. If you like this, I hope that you'll leave me a comment and share it with somebody else. If just let me know that you got some benefit from this video, and I appreciate every single one of you, and God bless and have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.